Welcome back to Culture Pools. Today we're diving into the world of employer branding with Kristýna.
Let's take processes that maybe are not that great.
Yeah, I think it creates some sort of like a trust element to it as well.
Let's see what 2025 will bring.
Welcome back to Culture Pools. Today we're diving into the world of employer branding with Kristýna. Kristýna is an experienced HR and employer branding consultant. She spent years helping companies define their identity, attract top talent, and build strong workplace cultures. In this episode, specifically, we'll talk about how Kristýna found her way into the world of people and culture, what led her to employer branding, and her insights on creating employer value proposition that truly reflects a company's culture. Whether you're in HR or just curious about what makes a workplace stand out, this one's for you. So let's get started. Hi, Kristýna. Happy to have you on the podcast today. How are you feeling?
Hi, Joanna. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm doing really well. So thanks for inviting me to this podcast.
Sure. Okay, so let's dive straight in. So maybe at the beginning we can start a little bit with an introduction. Who are you? What do you do? And what initially drew you to the world of HR?
So to answer your question, it's actually quite interesting journey. I mean, it wasn't really like planned path, I would say, to study HR, but somehow I got to study human resources. And I always wanted to see like how I can combine HR with marketing, because I see myself as a creative person, I would say, and actually employer branding is a great way how to combine experience from human resources, but also a bit of marketing. So I would say like this journey was more of discovery, and early in my career, I basically realized that HR is not only about policies, processes, but it's also about like shaping cultures, and building connections and making the workplace better for people. So that's actually what really drew me in and what makes it really interesting.
Yeah. So what were some of the key experiences kind of early in your career that helped shape your approach to company culture, people management?
Yeah, so one of my first HR roles involved basically working on employee engagement initiatives. So to see like how small actions actually can make a huge improvement was a really interesting aspect for me. So like changing like small things on onboarding, small things when it comes to talent acquisition processes. It's actually really interesting to see like how big impact it can make. And and also when it comes to culture, like it's actually how companies do things. So the culture is not something like abstract. It's actually built through actions and yeah, it's important that companies actually shape the culture.
Yeah. So nowadays, I think like your focus is mostly on employer branding. So I guess you have been like transitioning through different areas of HR. And like you said, you love combining the HR aspects with marketing. So that seems like a natural way in that direction. So just wondering at what point of your career did employer branding become like a natural step for you, and was there like a defining moment or like a project that kind of led you in that direction specifically?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I mean, I came across the term employer branding or employee brand really early in my career. So when I started actually working as an HR administrator, a couple of years ago now. So I heard about the term and it sounded really interesting to me, and I wanted to learn more and more about this. And basically, as you know, employee branding is quite new. Still, I would say in its nappies, but it's evolving. So it became really interesting to dig deeper and to learn more about it. So even though my roles at the beginning of my career were not about employer branding and it was pure HR, I was learning on the side and was just curious. So I would say my curiosity brought me into employer branding and yeah, so and then, like when I was involved in talent acquisition and HR, so I realized how companies are spending a lot of money on recruitment. So always I heard like, let's get more job boards, more job boards. Let's do this and that. But, like, and for example, some of them were sharing some kind of content, but, it was a bit empty content. It wasn't really like content bringing the value to potential candidates. And yeah, so seeing all this and, like on the side, learning about employer branding and just, made it more interesting and even, let's say, more aspects about onboarding and how companies can improve it. It's also part of employer branding. It's actually shaping, how you do onboarding, even offboarding. It's shaping overall perception of the company, which is employer brand, right? So yeah, I mean, when it comes to like projects, let's say that was really interesting and eye-opening to me. And basically, in one of my roles, I was working on building. Of course, I wasn't only one working on this project. We were a team, but we were building EVP for internship program. So it was really interesting to dig deeper, like what talent really wants and is looking for, what the young actually talent is looking for. So we really needed to dig deeper into the external research, internal research. We had many conversations with interns that were already on board, but also, like employees that joined the company recently. They were fresh graduates. But also we were talking to our mentors that were, teaching interns new skills. And it was really like eye-opening to see that, if you really define your value, it will attract the right people. So we're talking about EVP. And if it's really done well, then it's really effective. And in terms of these internship programs, I'm seeing in iGaming industry, basically some companies actually do internship programs, and it's very also effective way to get employees on board. Like, it's like the person is intern today, but they might be, and actually that's the goal with most of the companies to have this person long term. So it's really good, and it was very good project for me to see and be involved. Yeah.
Yeah, I think like we start thinking about employer branding when we do those other, let's say, traditional HR activities, right? Like you try to attract talent and you're like, okay, like I don't want to say spend tons of money on talent acquisition. How can we do that? And how we can strengthen the brand. So I think it kind of like all is gradually overlapping, and companies think about it even when they don't like necessarily say straight up, okay, this is what we're working on, like, we're gonna have this new employer branding strategy, but it's always kind of like in the back of your head. So like, what would you say, how did your background in those like more traditional HR roles prepare you for kind of the transition to be transition into employer branding, but I'm also just being an expert in that field specifically, and like stepping a little bit out of the HR roles?
Yeah, it's actually very interesting, and it was a long journey, I would say. And at this time, it's always about kind of like showing the value to companies, what is employer branding, and what kind of impact it can have. But in terms of my transition from HR and talent acquisition, because my experience is in HR, but also talent acquisition, it's actually great to have this kind of experience because you know how it works. Like how onboarding works, what is in the background. So, like what kind of steps future employees and candidates need to go through. And for the future, because it's also part of employee branding. And as I already mentioned, like onboarding, I always talk about onboarding, but it is actually shaping the perception, and it's a very like important aspect of the organization to really have good onboarding, because again, it's shaping the perceptions. And when in terms of talent acquisition, again, like seeing how it works in the background, I mean, how the interviews are done, like what comes next, after, let's say, the candidate is selected for the position. So what is the process and how we can improve it? It's actually really good to see and brings you ideas, right? Like how to do things better. And companies usually say, yeah, but employee branding, let's do a bit of employee branding. And to be honest, a lot of companies probably don't know what it really is, but that's with the learning, right? So I mean, it takes years to kind of understand, the terminology and so on, but it doesn't need to be expensive, right? Because usually companies would think this is expensive, employer branding, we cannot afford it. But actually company can take baby steps and improve, let's say, processes that maybe are not that great. So they can just, put shoes of candidates and basically go through the process themselves. So they can, let's say, do a bit of team building in terms of talent acquisition and go through the process and see what can be improved. I mean, in smaller companies, this is done faster because, you can change things faster. But yeah, these are actually, for example, activities that don't need to cost as much. Yeah. So, I mean, I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah.
You did, and I think that's the thing that many companies think this is something like a big project, and you need to invest tons of money, and we're already investing in talent acquisition and getting external recruiters, job boards, like all those things. Like, why would we have the budget for it? But I think we're gonna get to that a little bit later and speak about it in more detail. But I do think it's like a great point that you said, that you can start really, really small and just build the culture around it and do those daily activities that can really make a change.
Exactly. And I mean, yeah, sorry to interrupt you. So,
No, go ahead.
companies think that, let's say, that's, if they do employer branding, in a lot of cases, I've seen that they started working on some content on LinkedIn and they stopped because they didn't see, let's say, a lot of results. But the thing is that employer branding is building and shaping the brand. So it takes time. It could take years, actually. It can take years, not just 1 month, 2 months, so that's the thing. Yeah. It's long-term investment.
Yeah, it's not a sprint.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you mentioned just a couple of minutes ago that you feel like many companies don't really understand what employer branding is. So could you share your little definition with us?
Yeah, I mean, there is for sure many definitions, and basically employer brands is a set of perceptions. So how the company is perceived, and basically I can tell you examples. Let's say you go for dinner with a friend and then you talk about the company that you work for and you're sharing your experience. Then let's say once you join, you have some kind of onboarding experience with the company, and maybe it didn't work really well. Maybe you were waiting for your laptop too long, but you still remember that, right? Then you go on Glassdoor and you check the reviews, and this says a lot about your employer brand, the rating, and also like engagement survey results. That's also part of the employer. It's actually perceptions. So perceptions of you as a company. But again, like there is a lot of definitions, and probably there could be a question: what is the difference between employer brand and employer branding? So employer branding is actually, like doing different things to make sure that perception is shaped in the right direction. So it's the process. The branding is the process, but employer brand, it's you're actually like overall perception of you as a company. So what's to work for you?
Yes. So, like, what would you say? Why does it matter to have a strong employer brand, and how does it help you stay competitive?
Yeah, so for sure, they can hire the right people better, faster, because already, if you have a strong employer brand, your company will be in their minds before they even apply. So they will already know who you are as an employer. So they already know what you do, who you are, what is your culture like, because they're surrounded by your content. They've seen you everywhere, right? So this is the sign of strong employer brand. And as you can imagine, as I mentioned, you will attract right candidates faster. You will decrease your recruitment cost for sure, and even the employees, the people inside of your company will stay longer with you.
Yeah, I think it
So
creates some sort of like a trust element to it as well, because obviously we trust people who we know. Like you said, like if a friend told us about this great job opportunity, has been with this company for a couple of years, it's going great. Like, of course, those little brand ambassadors spread out, like even unconsciously, really help.
yeah, that's true. That's true. And employee ambassador program is actually one part of employee branding, and it's really interesting one as well. So yeah, you mentioned it. Actually, it's really good that you mentioned it. Yeah.
So, like, say, as a consultant, when you start working with a company and they say, okay, like, we are a small startup, we would like to scale, and we think that like a strong employer brand will really help us achieve our goals when it comes to talent acquisition, retention. How do you go about like identifying and building the employer brand from the ground up? So a company that hasn't really paid attention to it at all in the past.
Yeah. Very good question. Actually, it's good to understand their pain points, right? Like, what is their end goal? What they want to achieve by investing into employer branding. So, understanding their goals is really important, because not everyone wants to, let's say, go through building EVP at the beginning, especially, let's say, if they're a startup. I'm not saying that it's not important. Like, even though you're a startup, EVP is very important. But like if you want to achieve something else, basically, it's really important for me to understand the goals. But how I always start, so I start with the research, meaning external research to understand the competition, so competition analysis, but also like the trends in the industry, what their target audience is actually looking for. And also I run internal surveys. So it's really important to understand what is the current perception inside of the company. And then, like you also need to run focus groups to dig deeper into the findings of the survey. And the important aspect, and sometimes could be forgotten, to really speak to the leadership, because you need to understand their vision and the strategy, what they want to achieve. And actually, it's very common that if you speak to leadership, basically their perception of their company is different than perception of the company of
The employees.
the employee. So it's important to understand this aspect as well, and then you combine the findings together, and you find the kind of like sweet spot. It's actually, you know, like what is repeating, what is common from your findings, and then basically you also need to build up right messaging to your target audiences to make sure it resonates. So yeah, I mean, again, depending what the company is looking for, if the company is looking for, you know, like just building content, it's still important to talk to your internal employees to understand the perception and the stories that, you know, we could share, we could talk about what are the interesting aspects of your company and as a workplace, interesting aspects of your culture, and basically what we could communicate externally, and, you know, basically what is really working well. You know, the company should be loud about it on social media, on LinkedIn, on Instagram. And yeah, so there's lots of things we could talk about it whole day, but
Yeah.
hopefully I answer your question.
Yes, you have for sure. And you also touched upon actually the next thing that I wanted to talk about. You mentioned EVP.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
So again, there could be more definitions. So EVP, employer value proposition. So it needs to answer questions of who you are as an employer, basically, and what do you offer to your current and future or potential employees. So it needs to answer this question. And if you want to have effective EVP, it needs to be attractive, relevant, which is really important, like to have relevant EVP. It needs to be true. So based on true stories, what really happened. So you always need to be like able to show stories, and it needs to be credible, sustainable. So it means align with vision and strategy and distinct. And to tell you more about EVP, so it's a promise from the company to its people what we offer as an employer. To people, it's you know, answers core question, core reason our company exists to our employees. So what is the reason the people work hard in the company, and what they get actually back? Yeah, so that's actually how I would define it.
Okay, yeah. And how do you think, like, how would you maybe balance crafting an EVP that is both kind of aspirational and authentic? Because I do think it is a challenge. Like, it feels like, you know, it's always like you always have those big visions for the companies, but you, as you mentioned already answering my previous question, like it needs to be authentic. Like people need to see that this is actually what they stand for, what happened before.
Yeah.
You know, so like say if you were to try and establish EVP for a new client, like how do you go around it to make it both, yeah, aspirational, inspirational, and authentic?
Yeah, I mean, your question is very tricky, and you need to really find the balance of aspiration. So it's not too aspirational. I mean, to be very honest with you, like no company is perfect, as we all know. So all the companies have their challenges, but you know, like if you acknowledge these challenges in an honest way, it can make your EVP more relatable and more real to people. So even if, let's say, there is something not working that well, you can talk about it in a still in a nice way, you know. So there is a way how to make your EVP more relevant, more relatable. And the key, you know, if you go, okay, there will be some aspirational side, but the key is to ensure that messaging is backed by real actions. And I already mentioned it, because if you just give empty promises, that's not going to work, right? Like it's going to be nice marketing of your company, but as soon as the candidate goes on your Glassdoor and see that your rating is 2.3, this is not going to work, right? Or as soon as they join.
Yeah, the credibility is gone, no matter how hard you work on your marketing.
It's really interesting, but you know, I I heard this from, for sure, it's not from my mind, but I would compare it to like the shop window to the shop. So you just like pass by, you do shop window shopping, and you see like nice clothes, in the shop window, and amazing, like it looks all amazing. And then you enter the shop and they sell like some kind of not appealing stuff. So what you would do, like you would leave that shop immediately.
Yeah, or bad customer service in the shop, like you were straight out, right?
Exactly. If you see a grumpy, sales assistant, what you gonna do? You leave. And the same is for, like employer brand. So, and the EVP, if it's not based on the real stories, if it's not relevant, if it's not true, people will find out, people will find out and they will
Yeah.
leave. Yeah.
So, could you share from your own experience an example of a project that you worked on that like really stood out to you, and what do you think made it so unique and maybe successful?
Yeah, so as I already mentioned, this internship program and the EVP, I mean, before I joined this company, basically, I would never know that you can do also EVP for internship program. And that was really interesting project, but again, like it's long-term investment, even though this EVP took us months to complete, because as you can imagine, you need to do external research, internal research, run surveys, speak to people, do focus groups. So it was a long project, but it was very effective because the company actually was really successful in attracting young people, interns to the organization. And actually, there were students who graduated and stayed in the company. So it's actually like huge success. So this is,
Yeah, that's
uh,
great. And
yeah.
maybe some companies underestimate it, getting intern on boards and actually paying attention to making sure that they have great experience.
Yeah, because they see it, like these things take long, and usually companies want, I'm not saying like all of them, but there are some companies who just want things to happen fast, like tomorrow or overnight, but good things take time to build. So yeah, there is a little bit of patience needed in that aspect for sure.
For sure. Yeah. So, are there like any companies, brands you personally admire for their employer branding approach? What do you think they're doing right?
Yeah, so good question. And my favorite company is for sure Spotify. I really like
Hmm.
how they communicate their culture, their life inside of their organization. But not only that, I like their graphics, how it looks. So the content looks really appealing, and they share real stories. It's based on, creativity, and I really love that. And another company I've been following since I started really like digging into employee branding, learning more, is HubSpot. And they did, like
Oh,
they were the company who actually started. I don't know, like if they started or doing that employees takeovers, so they would assign, let's say, the Instagram stories for one day to some employee, and they would share how their day looks like, and they would walk you through the day, and there were real like interviews of the people, and it was truly inspiring. And they really invested at that time, like when I was really looking into HubSpot, a lot of money, I would say, into employer branding, but I can imagine it was really effective. Yeah. And even HubSpot.
100%. And I think that makes it so authentic when you just give the voice to the employees.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think even, the HubSpot had the culture code. So it was really interesting to read through, and it's amazing document to kind of like to give to new starters, right? To go through it, to learn what's like to work in that company. So yeah, I mean, these two companies I would mention, but if there is like one more that I could add, could be also Airbnb. So yeah, this would be my three companies.
Top three, yeah. And I mean, Spotify, when you just mentioned it, like the image of the big billboards with, no, I think I don't remember exactly what it says, but it was about, we trust our employees, so we don't need them to come to the office. We don't need to micromanage them, like all those things. Like, even though I don't follow it, it stuck in your head. So they must be doing something right. And that's just a recent example. I know they've been on it for a while. And there are probably many more from the past. Um, so when building employer branding strategies, where do you usually find your inspiration? Like, do you get inspired by the teams, specific brands that you will be working with, or do you take it like completely outside of the box from somewhere else?
Yeah, I mean, it's good that you asked this, and it's kind of this is where companies struggle to find inspiration. So, what kind of stories we should share? What kind of culture aspects we should talk about, right? So, I mean, you should look for inspiration inside. You can talk to people, they can tell you a lot. Hey, we could, talk about the tournament that we are gonna do next week. We can talk about a workshop that is happening, let's say next month. So and yeah, so first talk to your employees. They can give you lots of ideas. It doesn't need to be, if
Yeah.
you are just one employee branding person in the whole company. It's impossible that you come up with the whole, like, all ideas. So talk to your people and get inspired there. But also, it's important to really follow trends and check other companies what they do. I'm not saying you should copy, so don't copy like what Google
Yeah.
is doing. Don't copy like exactly what they are doing, but get inspired there. Like, get a bit of inspiration and change it in your way, and just make sure it's actually not copied, I would say. So this is important. Just get your inspiration, and yeah, but you will find a lot of examples and a lot of stories inside. So yeah.
For sure. And I think it's so fun for employees to be included in things like that. So
Yeah.
I don't think, that this is like a task that's draining for the teams. I think it's something that can add to like overall just motivation
Yeah.
and feeling like included and part of the team. We touched upon this question actually before, because you mentioned early at the beginning of our conversation that employer branding doesn't need to necessarily cost a lot and be very time consuming for small teams that are trying to scale. So, how would you say you approach building an employer brand for companies with very limited resources, and for those smaller teams? Like, what can they do? How do they get started?
Yeah, so again, I mean, employer branding doesn't need to be that costly. I would say you can focus on things that really like are maybe small, or look that they are small, but they really matters and they will make a huge change. And just, focus on employee storytelling, even though this could be time consuming, but there will be people inside of your company that will be happy to share the stories. So, and be actually transparent as much as you can inside of the company, and focus on communication, because this is, I would say, number one. Communication is super important. And in terms of, let's say, less costly exercises that you can do inside of the company, just go through the onboarding with your team. Go through the onboarding, and step by step, just, imagine that you're candidate. So how is that journey? Like, how it feels like? Is it too long? Or, what's your application process? Do you need to fill again, like all the boxes after uploading your resume? And do you have some questions that you don't need to ask that are extra? So, like, little things that will make a lot of impact, I would say, and are not that costly to change. But also, you can use LinkedIn, you can use Glassdoor, you can set up your Glassdoor site. And yeah, and in terms of, again, let's say talent acquisition, go through the process, see what's not working, try to improve small things, and you will see they're not that costly at all. So this would be my suggestion, and also leveraging your employees, using employee testimonials. They are free, but again, very powerful. And just to make sure, if you have Glassdoor, if you have your reviews already there, and maybe some of them are negative, just make sure to respond to the review. So it will show that you care as an employee, you care about the experience that your employees are having, or your former employees that left your company actually had with you. And do your best to improve internal communication, because if the employees feel valued, they will naturally actually become your ambassadors. And be transparent as much as you can. Of course, not all the things can be shared, but there is a certain level of transparency that you can do inside of your company and has massive impact. So yeah, these would be my recommendations.
Yeah, I think pretty straightforward, but like if you would really put some time and thought into it, I think those can be pretty powerful as well. We're going to be wrapping up soon. So let's maybe talk a little bit about the future and the future trends in employer branding, EVP strategies. How do you think it will change this year, like the whole approach to employer branding and maybe in the coming years in general?
Yeah, so I think number one, it's AI. And I think everyone is very curious what AI will bring. And it's already like changing how we work, the way we work. It's changing our roles, and it has big impact. So I would love to see, and for sure it will change a lot in terms of like recruitment. It's already changing. And for sure AI will help create more targeted employee branding campaigns. So in this term, but yeah, for sure there is lots of things that we don't know yet. So we can just stay curious and see what's gonna happen in next few months. And yeah, try to be, in terms of like the trends, I would say authenticity over perfection. So just like companies sharing authentic stories and real messaging, real things that actually are happening in the company. So not just like having fluff, marketing and sharing appealing things, but real stories. Personalization, tailored candidate experience. So it's the same as a consumer marketing, basically, tailored, personalized experience. I mean, let's see what 2025 will bring. I mean, we're only in March, so there's still many months to go.
Yes, I mean, I'm very curious. I mean, I see in my industry, obviously how AI is changing it, and obviously everyone is talking about the same thing, but what I see more and more is kind of what you mentioned, making it more personal. A couple of years ago, when we first were getting started, AI and automation helped us to get to volumes, but it was not necessarily very targeted and personalized. Now I think it's getting into that direction. So I think the companies that will actually educate themselves and learn new tools and keep an eye on it will be able very quickly to adapt and kind of like use AI in a smart way to personalize the approach and personalize how their employer brand is perceived through, say, content they create and messaging that they use, say, throughout the talent acquisition process, onboarding process. So these are the things that I'm always keeping my eyes on, because super
Yeah,
interested in the new tools and how AI will be shaping it. But hoping to think that we still have some influence on it.
exactly.
So, what's next for you, Kristýna? What are your plans and exciting projects that you're looking forward to? What are you working on right now?
So, yes, we had this conversation before. As you know, I'm starting my journey as an employer branding consultant. So basically, I'm happy
Very exciting.
Yeah, very exciting journey. So it just started. So basically, I'm happy to help the companies to shape their employer brand. Like if they need, let's say, help to build their EVP, I can guide them through the process, or I can even run the process for them if they need help to build up the content for LinkedIn, for Instagram. I can help with that too, and even the creative side. So basically, employer branding, everything related to employer branding, and yeah. So that would be where.
Sounds great. And I think like so many companies need it. So I think it's going to be an exciting journey for you. And then of course, if anyone from the listeners today, someone is listening until this point, first of all, thank you. Second of all, I will link all Kristýna's details under the episode. So if you have any questions related to employer branding, or possibly need some help with ideas, the strategy, and then Kristýna is definitely the right person to reach out to. So yeah, well, thank you so much, Kristýna, for your time today. That was great. I think I got a lot out of it. And yes, I hope we keep in touch.
Yeah, thank you to John. It was really lovely chat, really nice talking to you. And yeah, thank you for having me.
Of course, yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining me on Culture Pulse, the heartbeat of your workplace. I hope you enjoyed today's episode and found some insights to take back to your team. Don't forget to subscribe for more discussions, and for all the latest updates on the podcast, follow Magic Mondays Miami on LinkedIn. See you next time!